you so much for that warm welcome. Thanks also to the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC and to all of you. I know you're very busy, so I really appreciate the time that you're taking to spend with me, and I'm going to do my best to make this next hour as worthwhile as possible. So I thought it would be a good way to start out today by conducting a few polls. This way, you'll be able to learn more about each other, and I'll get some background about you and try and modify this webinar as best I can to fit the needs of the audience. So why don't we start off with the first poll, Anna? And I will say that these polls are completely anonymous and confidential. So please be candid. We're not keeping the results. We have no idea who has responded to which questions or how you have responded. So the first question is up now, and it's about employee safety. And the question is very basic. It's a yes and no question. Is employee safety embedded in your corporate culture? Yes or no? Take a couple seconds here to answer this question, please. And it looks like you're all busy answering this question, which is great. And this is where I think I ask for a drum roll for the results. That's terrific. I'm very happy to see that 92% of you have employee safety embedded in your corporate culture. That will certainly make it easier to incorporate road safety if it isn't already there. So why don't we move on to the second question? Does your company have a road safety program? And you have 4 options here to answer, whether it's a standalone program, whether it's part of your overall health and safety program, whether you have some driving related policies, but not a full program, or whether you're just getting started. So again, if you could respond, that would be great. Take a few seconds here. Well, isn't that terrific? Okay, so most of you have some driving related policies, but maybe it's not yet part of your overall health and safety program. Well, this is a good place for you to start. So I really appreciate you participating in this webinar. So I promise that you're not going to have to work on polls all the way throughout this webinar, but let's go to poll number 3 now. What percentage of your employees drive for work purposes at any point during their work week? Now, the answer to your question may change throughout the webinar once we talk about what driving for work actually means. But for now, based on your understanding, do your employees drive for work less than 25% of the time, 25 to 50% of the time, more than 50% of the time, or 100% of the time? And again, your answers are confidential, so please feel free to answer candidly. And it looks like we're just finishing up. So it's all over the waterfront, but we don't have any 100% fleece. Well, that's good. This webinar is actually just perfect for you then. And let's move on to the last poll before we get started. How would you rate your organization's level of road safety? You've got 5 options here, hopefully not terrible, and hopefully you're at the higher end of things towards fantastic, but even at fantastic, I'm sure there's always room for improvement. So if you could respond to this poll, we'll see the results in a few seconds, and then we can get started. I can hardly wait for this one. This one must have been a little harder. Okay, doing well. Well, the vast majority of you are doing well. That's terrific. But the rest of you, I'm sure that participating in this webinar is going to help you get on the road to improved road safety for your employees. So I think this is the point at which I try and take over the screen, and we'll see if this works out. Et voila. Hopefully you can see this. So here's the webinar outline for today. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about road safety at work. I'm going to move on to then explain why it's important to focus on road safety as part of your occupational health and safety program. We'll talk about how to integrate road safety into your corporate culture, the benefits of a road safety program, and then I'll provide you with a few tips on where and how to start, or where and how to improve. So let's move on from there. And why is this not moving? Okay, what is road safety at work? We are an initiative that is funded by WorkSafe BC and by the Justice Institute of British Columbia. I think all of you know about WorkSafe BC, so I won't spend any time telling you about that organization, but you may not have heard about the Justice Institute of BC. We're funded by WorkSafe BC, managed by the Justice Institute. The Justice Institute is a public safety educator. In fact, it is Canada's leading public safety educator. It's a post-secondary institution that offers programs in public safety, in health, community, and social justice, and in criminal justice. And importantly, it also offers a driver education center programming. That programming is available for police, emergency responders, and sheriffs, and that's where they learn advanced driving skills. JIBC also offers skills-specific training for private organizations that are interested in having their employees improve their driver training. And so that's why we're a good fit for JIBC. We have been around road safety at work, or RSA as we like to call ourselves, for about 10 years. And during that time, we have developed a whole series of resources and tools designed primarily for employers to help their employees be safer drivers at work. All of our educational tools are available through our Road Safety at Work website, so I encourage you to visit our website. And because of our funding model, all of the material that is available through Road Safety at Work is free, and that includes the consulting services that are available to employers. So that's my little spiel about road safety at work. Along with the programming, the tools, and the resources, Road Safety at Work manages two annual safe driving campaigns. The poster on the left is about Cone Zone, and the poster on the right is about Shift into Winter. You may have heard of both of these campaigns because they have been running for a number of years. The Slow Down, My Dad Works Here Cone Zone campaign is all about helping people who to learn how to drive better and safer around construction work zones or other workers who are roadside. And in this photo, you'll notice that it's a utility person. And we also try and help raise awareness about driving safely when workers are in an emergency situation at roadside. So perhaps they're fixing a flat tire, but it's all about helping people understand how they should behave in and around work zones. The second campaign is focused on winter, obviously. It's aimed at the general public as well as employers, and it's aimed at helping people understand how and what they should be doing to be prepared for winter driving. And you may have seen our ads on public message boards on highways around the province. You may have heard our radio ads encouraging people to go to our website and to go to the Shift into Winter website to learn more about how to drive safer in the winter. So those are the two campaigns. And we'll start off now by talking about some employer obligations. Now, I'm sure that all of you know that as employers, you have a legal obligation for employee safety, but you might not know that that obligation extends to when your employees are driving for work. And the definition of driving for work extends beyond people who are whose primary responsibility is driving for work. It could be, for example, and this is an old example, but if a bookkeeper were to go to a bank and make a deposit, or if your a salesperson is going to visit a client. So it's really any type of work, any type of driving that occurs while they are at work. And the only exception to that is when they are in the process of commuting to or from work. And in fact, when they are driving for work, the vehicle itself, whether they own the vehicle or whether you own the vehicle, is considered to be a workplace. And so all of the legal obligations associated with making sure that people are making sure that employees are safe extends to the vehicle as well. So why are we talking about road safety? We're talking about road safety for two reasons. One, unfortunately, because there are so many crashes that take place in British Columbia. And two, because those crashes are preventable. We often use the language accident to talk about motor vehicle incidents, but in fact, these are incidents that do not have to happen. So I'm going to take you through some statistics now to illustrate how significant motor vehicle crashes are in the province. But between 2015 and 2019, 103 people died in a work-related motor vehicle crash. That's about 1/3 of all work-related traumatic fatalities in the province. During the last decade, about 300 people in British Columbia died in a crash. And according to the BC Injury and Research Prevention Unit, motor vehicle crashes are the fourth leading cause of injury deaths after unintentional poisoning, suicide, and falls. And employers have an incredible opportunity to affect both motor vehicle crash rates, whether they are work-related or not, because studies show that the habits that people learn at work are habits that they take home, and they will continue to apply. So any improvements they make in driving that they learn at work, they will apply when they are driving personally. So that's a great opportunity. Now, from a purely mercenary perspective, a claim arising from a motor vehicle crash is likely more than 2 times an average WorkSafe BC claim. So that's comparing about a $47,000 cost for a motor vehicle crash claim to $22,000 for an average WorkSafe BC claim. Now, given the fact that claims are motor vehicle related claims are so expensive, you're probably not going to be surprised to know that when someone is injured in a motor vehicle crash, they're going to be off work for almost 60% longer than they would be if they had been injured for any other reason. So for those two reasons alone, if we can do anything to reduce the motor vehicle crash rate or the severity rate, then that's obviously an improvement. Now, in total, almost 1,500 people were injured and off work between 2015 and 2019. That's a lot of people who could have otherwise been well and productive rather than being rehabilitated and recuperating. And this is the last statistic that I'll be showing you, but this just gives a sense of BC's fatality and injury rates as compared to those of the Canadian average. And this is based on 2018 data because that's the last year that we have full data. You'll see that BC's fatality rate is slightly higher than the Canadian rate. Our injury rate is slightly lower than the Canadian rate. And these, because of the scale of these two charts, it might look like there are significant differences, but they're relatively the same. Now, ICBC reported there were about 1,000 claims for every 100,000 licensed drivers in 2018. That obviously covers more than work-related claims, and it also includes property claims. So not every one of those claims involved an injury or a fatality, but that's still a 1% chance of being in a crash in any given year. Now, that might be good odds for a lottery, but that's certainly not a lottery you want to win. It's not a lottery you want your employees to win. Now, the chance of being in a crash, whether it happens during work or not, is significant for two reasons. And I'm going to repeat a couple of things that I've mentioned already. And that is, if an employee is injured or worse, killed in a crash, it's not going to matter if it happened on their own or on their own time or on work time. They and their colleagues, their families, and you will still have to deal with their consequences. And second, the personal, financial, and economic cost of crashes is borne by everyone. And so that's stating the obvious, but reducing crash rates also benefits everyone. And we know that it can be done. About 10 years ago, Sweden made the commitment that it would reduce fatality and injury crash rates. They were at the point that we are today. And in that 10-year period, they reduced their fatality and injury crash rates by half. So it is definitely possible. Now, this is an important point. I made it before. Crashes are preventable. And even when your employees are doing absolutely the right thing, they're operating their vehicle legally, they're doing nothing wrong, they can still be at risk for a crash. And so why would you not want to do everything you can to provide them with the skills to prevent those crashes? In those moments when a crash can occur, someone who is skilled or has had the appropriate training can do things to actively prevent the crash from happening, or if a crash does have to happen, they can reduce the consequences of that crash. So there are obvious benefits to providing this training. As I mentioned before, studies show that people's driving habits are relatively stable. If they learn to improve their driving for work, they will apply that improved driving when they are driving at home. The most common contributing factor to crashes are still human factors. Even though vehicles are being made more safer, even though infrastructure is safer, human factors still constitute more than 90% of a contributing factor for all crashes. And that's well above vehicle condition, it's well above weather, it's well above the environment. Human beings are still the most important factor because they're obviously the people who are operating the vehicle and are making decisions. They're making decisions before they make a trip, and they're making decisions while they are conducting their trip. They're asking themselves questions like, do I have to make this trip? What route will I take when I make this trip? Are they going to decide to speed? Are they going to be distracted? Those are all the things that the drivers have control over. So I mentioned distraction. It is the most common human factor that leads to motor vehicle crashes. And the photo on the left identifies some very common things that people do when they are driving that can lead to distraction. Not surprisingly, it's eating, it's drinking, it's playing with their devices, even when using devices is illegal. The photo on the right might come as a bit of a surprise. Those of you who are in newer vehicles will recognize that there are lots of new vehicle safety technologies that are in place that are intended to prevent crashes. And yet dashboards and all of the signals and the doodads that are on dashboards can be quite confusing. So if a driver doesn't understand or know how to effectively use those technologies, which buttons lead to what actions, they can actually be quite distracting. And so ironically, the vehicle safety technologies that are there on your dashboard to help keep you safer can sometimes actually cause a more dangerous situation by causing distraction. New and young drivers are a concern. Even from 15 or 20 years ago, what driver trainers, and this is anecdotal, but a very common comment that we hear from driver trainers, new and young drivers tend to be less experienced, less knowledgeable, and less skilled than even 15 or 20 years ago. Many young people now are growing up in urban centers. They don't have exposure to driving as much as they had as those from previous generations. We don't have people growing up on farms anymore, learning how to drive on tractors. The exposure to driving to vehicles is less. And as a consequence, even when new and young drivers have achieved a driver license, they simply don't have the same degree of skill. You need time, you need proper instruction, and you need practice in order to be able to become a safer driver. And in case you are thinking that self-driving vehicles and other safe driving technologies will be replacing the need for human beings to exercise good judgment, I'm here to tell you that it will still be important to invest in safety training and to help employees increase their driving skills for the short term. It's simply not a panacea that is in our near-term future. So I said at the very beginning that this webinar is about embedding road safety into corporate culture. We all know what corporate culture is. Culture is the shared beliefs and values that guide and define an organization. It's the roadmap for employees to help them understand what's expected of them. Culture is demonstrated and consistently and clearly communicated by an organization's leadership, and that's you. And the things that an organization says are important gets the time, attention, and resources deserving of their stature. And when a healthy culture is developed and nurtured, it helps organizations to great success. So for road safety to be recognized and a valued component of a business's culture, it has to reside in the organization's commitment to safety generally. It can't be treated as a separate entity or something that is dealt with on an annual basis. Once a year, you check driver's licenses. Once a year, you check a driver's abstract. It has to be woven into the fabric of a company's safety program. And to paraphrase an old boss of mine, I will say that culture is what you do. It's not what you say you do. It's something that you have to live, breathe, and feel every single day. Now, a strong road safety culture means that employees will maintain their safety vision when they are behind the wheel. And that's very important because unlike an office or a factory setting, when supervisors are there to provide corrective action or corrective direction, when employees are driving, they are off on their own. So it's really important for them to know what they are supposed to be doing, what is expected of them when they're in their vehicles. Employers rely on employees to know how to drive for work and to consciously and conscientiously make the right decisions and take corrective actions. A positive and thriving safety culture supports those things. So we're used to thinking of an effective safety program in black and white terms, or in this case, in green and red terms, but in dollars and cents. So I'll start there. But it's difficult to quantify because most of the financial benefits related to preventing motor vehicle crashes are saved costs. They're the crashes that didn't happen. They're the employees who weren't injured. And they're It's the vehicle that didn't need to be repaired. So we're talking about theoretical but real costs. And here is another immeasurable benefit. The employee who stays with your firm because she feels valued, and the productivity that didn't dip because someone wasn't injured, and the lack of disruption, and the positive employee morale because no one is worried about who might get hurt next. Put another way, it's almost always going to be more effective to retain and keep the employees that you have rather than to have to go out and recruit, orient, and train a new one. Keeping people healthy and safe is one way to achieve that. And importantly, as the population ages and labor becomes scarce, attraction and retention will become even more important for businesses to succeed. And lastly, there's knowing that you as an employer have met all of your legal obligations. You have done what you can to protect and nurture the people that you rely on. So let's break it down even further. Even with ever-improving technology, the success of businesses will still rely on people and their commitment to companies. And what keeps people engaged, interested, and committed? Obviously, compensation and benefits will always be a key factor, but increasingly, workers are telling us that organizational culture and fit are important factors for choosing and staying with one employer over another. And the things that matter to them include teamwork, security, and respect. And how do you show teamwork, security, and respect? By having a comprehensive, robust safety program that helps protect them, and by extension, helps protect the people that they love. Because remember, the good driving habits that they learn at work are the same driving habits that they will be using when they are driving their families around. Now, I did say earlier that it's very difficult to quantify, to pin down the exact numbers related to the savings from avoiding motor vehicle crashes. But the Traffic Injury Research Foundation, or TIRF, took a stab at doing this in 2020 when they issued a report that quantified the cost of preventing collisions due to distracted driving. TIRF is a Canadian-based, internationally recognized research organization focused on preventing deaths and injuries from motor vehicle collisions. Now, you can see the list that they've identified here. It ranges from avoiding vehicle damage to legal and medical costs. They also went to the trouble to identify avoided indirect costs. And there is a whole series of these. Now, not all the costs savings will apply to all crashes, and the extent to which these costs apply and who bears them will differ depending on the variety and the type of vehicles that are being operated and the quantity of driving that employees are having to do. The bottom line is that crashes are unnecessary costs since they are preventable. So I've talked about making the case to take up the challenge to prevent motor vehicle crashes and for prioritizing road safety as a key component of your company's culture. But where do you start? Well, we've tried to make it easy for employers at Road Safety at Work. We've identified 10 key steps. And as I talk through them, think about whether you're already doing some of these things. 10 steps sounds like a lot. It may seem overwhelming, but actually my guess is you're well into this 10-step process. So the first step is to understand your responsibilities for employees who drive for work. Well, as employers, it starts with knowing your legal obligations, but it also extends, as I mentioned, to your moral, ethical, and social responsibilities for the people who drive for you, for the people who work for you who drive. Establish management commitment. You've shown your commitment already by showing up today. What you say is important, and what you do to demonstrate that something is a priority matters to the people who you lead. And your employees will notice when you tell them and show them that road safety matters. I'm sure many of you are already engaging and communicating with your employees. Your commitment is the first step, but the next step is the participation and interest and commitment from your employees, because their feedback and their contribution are key. They're the ones who have the first-hand experience driving for work, and they're the ones who will know the hazards and risks that they face every day. They're the ones who are going to actively implement new strategies, tactics, policies, and procedures to bring about a successful road safety program. Step 4, identify driving safety related hazards. This is a crucial step because how well you do this will determine how ably your road safety program protects your employees. And the 5th step follows up on number 4, develop road safety policies and safe work procedures. This step involves both a plan for action and a description of the practices employees need to follow to implement an effective road safety program. Establish a driver selection and a review process. Since over 90% of crash causal factors are related to the things drivers do or don't do, focusing on the driver makes sense. That means deliberately establishing selection criteria, a review process, and if necessary, a training or skills development program for those people in your organization who must drive or who need help to get better at driving. The 7th step, rigorous vehicle selection process and inspection, really depends on the amount of driving that you're asking your drivers to do, or you're asking your employees to do, and whether you have a formal fleet or not. If you don't have a formal company fleet, at a minimum, you should be monitoring vehicle inspection and maintenance practices and making sure that they're being followed. Now, I have said over and over again that crashes are preventable. But even with the best road safety program in the world, you are still going to have incidents. And those incidents can be near misses or they can be actual crashes. You need to decide beforehand what is the threshold where something will be done and what will need to, and what things will need to be done. So if these incidents occur, or when these incidents occur, what will you be doing to learn from them and to improve the process? Number 9, establish how to develop and monitor and administer your road safety program. This is a basic step for every priority that you would have at your company. So allocate the resources that you need to make sure that once a road safety program is in place, you've got someone there who is responsible to monitor and administer it. And lastly, every business textbook says that what gets measured gets attention. It's no different for a road safety program. So better yet, incorporate this road safety program evaluation into your overall health and safety program, and you will more than likely already have a way to evaluate the program. Now, those are the 10 steps. As I said, it may sound like a long, involved process, but the sophistication of these steps will depend on the type of driving that you're asking your employees to do. Are they driving locally? Are they driving infrequently? Or are they taking longer trips? Are they driving every day? Depending on the amount and the type of driving that you're asking them to do, these could be relatively simple to implement. Now, you've already taken the first 2 steps by participating in this webinar. And the next step is to incorporate or add road safety into your engagement and communication mix, and move on to step 4, identify driving related hazards. Well, you're already almost halfway there. So I encourage you to continue on to developing a more robust or implementing a stronger road safety program. So I'm going to end now with a couple of recommendations in terms of how you might want to get started with a program generally, or how you might want to improve your program. Now, one of the poll questions at the very beginning was to ask you, how do you think you're doing? Well, this road safety snapshot, which is available on our website, is a survey instrument that will help you to benchmark and evaluate your company's current road safety program. It's a way for you to ask your employees and your supervisors about their attitudes and opinions about road safety at your workplace, and you can use that to check out whether your perspective and their perspective are aligned. I said that the first step was to learn about employer obligations. There are a couple of different ways that you can do this in a bit more in depth. You can take our online course, which is available again at Road Safety at Work. It's a 60 to 90 minute course. It can be started and stopped as and when you have the time to do it. We also have a webinar called Safety for Your Employees Who Drive Their Own Vehicle for Work. And in fact, it's a webinar that we produced in conjunction with the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC a couple of years ago. So it will have lots of examples that are relevant to your sector. And lastly, we offer free consulting services to any employer who would like some support. My email address is there, along with the email addresses for our road safety manager, Rick Walters, and our client relationship manager, Angelina Robinson. Any or all of us would be happy to help you with your road safety program. So I think that's it for the formal portion. And I'm happy now to take questions, Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Louise. That's so helpful and really great information for all of our attendees. I want to encourage you again, if you have additional questions for Louise, just click the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen and you can ask questions there and we'll be able to see them and allow Louise time to address them while we still have her here with us. Louise, we do have one question that came in through the chat a little bit ago from Wayne, wanting to know, let me just make sure I've got his question correctly here. Can you share any specific close quarter strategies?
So I'm not exactly sure what close quarter means, but does that mean like parking lot situations or loading dock situations?
Very likely, yes. Wayne, I'll ask you if you want to clarify. Close quarter maneuvering, parking lot, loading dock, yes.
So I'll start off by saying I am not a road safety expert. But what I can do is we do have some resources available, Wayne, on our website, and I'm happy to forward those to you if Jennifer would be so good to pass those on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Another question for you. Should drivers also take some of the courses at your website, not only managers? Is there content for workers as well as managers and supervisors?
We started off with the aim of helping employers to learn about road safety. And what we have found over the last couple of years in particular is that employers are starting to ask for material that can be used by employees who drive. So we are definitely in the process of developing those materials. We did a retrospective review of the people who are taking our online courses and our webinars. And what we've discovered, Jennifer, is that there seems to be a real interest on the part of workers and employees who drive to take those courses. And they're obviously getting some benefit because they're completing those courses. So even though they are designed for employers, even though they're designed for supervisors and managers, there's definitely material that is helpful for the people who are actually driving.
That's great. That's great. Just a thank you I want to pass along from one of our attendees. Thank you so much. This will help tremendously to build our program. And Louise, new question for you. You indicated a Scandinavian country reduced their motor vehicle fatalities by 50%. Are you able to speak to how they did this?
I can speak generally. So Sweden, in fact, a number of Scandinavian countries, I have reduced their injury and fatality rate for motor vehicle crashes. I mentioned Sweden in particular, and really, it sounds very simple, but uh, it was an all-out effort. It was identified as a priority for the country, and there was political buy-in for the change. They provided direction to bureaucrats. Um, there were public safety campaigns and educational campaigns aimed at employers, at drivers, at pedestrians. There were changes that were made to infrastructure, to the rules of the road. It was an all-out concerted effort. So it does require, it required leadership, and it required buy-in. And we've seen very positive and steady results throughout the 10 years. Their aim is to get to zero.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, I've got questions coming in a couple of places, so
Okay.
I'm trying to watch both. Will vehicle technology ever be regulated in the near future? For example, management wants to add backup cameras to vehicles, but drivers may find that a distraction despite the benefits. What advice would you give for somebody who's in the middle between those two groups?
You know, technology is the technology that is available today is absolutely incredible. Um, I will offer some observations that were made by the the owners of a very large courier company who have implemented backup cameras and also cameras in the cabs of the vehicles themselves, and they found a tremendous benefit. But I will say that they did a lot of work in terms of training, education, and deciding how and when those cameras were going to be implemented. And there's continual follow-up. So it's a very it can be a very sensitive issue, Jennifer, but done properly, it has tremendous positive results. And I'm not sure if that person will have follow-up questions, but I'm happy to maybe take that discussion offline for a bit more detail.
Fantastic, great, thanks so much. A question from Peter, actually, he's asking if we can share the link to the webinar that covers workers who use their own vehicles for work. I'm trying to pull that up and looking at our website migration. I think I'm going to have to hunt for it a little bit, so I will make sure that that's included in the follow-up email that we send after the webinar. So we'll make sure we get that to you. Another question, are you able to share a completed road safety program, or is there some kind of a template available?
Absolutely. There is a template available on our Road Safety at Work website, and I'm happy to get that link to you, Jennifer, so that you can pass that along.
Fantastic. That would be great to include for everyone. New question for you. Work-related claims occur as they arise out of or in the course of employment. Is there any distinction when it comes to when employees are on lunch? Some companies are paid breaks, some are not. Does it make a difference from a claims perspective?
You know, that's a good question. If they are on their personal time, so commuting, for example, is not considered part of work-related driving. If they are truly free to spend their lunch as they see fit, and they are not running an errand related to work, then that would be a personal incident.
Great, that's really helpful. Question from another audience member. Will you be able to access the presentation after the webinar? Yes, absolutely. We will share that in a follow-up email to you all. for the purpose of educating your management team on the need for a road safety program. He's also asking if these injury statistics are available on your website, Louise.
Yes, they absolutely are.
Fantastic. And yeah, if you can share any of that information or just links back with me that we can share out with members, that would be really helpful.
Excellent. I will certainly do that.
Fantastic. And could you please talk about the specifics of a driver's winter emergency kit when routes might include high snowy routes? We're driving through the Coquihalla. What do we need to have with us in the car?
You know, that's a great question. And just because I don't want to miss anything, what I will do is send you a link, because we do have recommended items for an emergency kit. And certainly, and even though people consider winter driving to be in snow, we also have advice in terms of foggy conditions, rainy conditions, which is experienced more often on the coast. So I'll send that along as well.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to
fantastic.
start making a list here.
Terrific. Yeah, we'll try to remember and keep track as well.
Okay.
I just want to mention also, within our own organization, we do have that requirement that for winter driving, for anyone who's making that trip, we have a Kelowna office as well, and people going back and forth. We have a kit that we provide, but there's also a tracking system that's part of that program. There's a form that's got to be filled out before anyone makes that trip, that we know and we can confirm that the employee has that. And I think that's an important piece of it as well, just from a management standpoint,
It's an
making sure
excellent
that
point.
people are using it. Yeah. New question. Are you able to speak about about additional vehicle insurance requirements and what employers should require, if any?
I'm sorry, that's not an area that I'm well versed in. I can certainly do some research and see if I can provide some help. There's no additional requirement, but I'm sure there are some best practices and recommended practices.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've seen policies from other organizations that include inspections, and some are even more prescriptive about what vehicles, the age of a vehicle that they allow employees to drive. And I don't know how they manage that, but I've definitely seen that in the wild. So different companies seem to address it different ways, as well as liability, requirements for additional liability insurance. New question for you though, Louise. We operate other machinery on the road, for example, forklifts. And are there specific safety measures that drivers should be aware of, or where to go to find more information? They have forklifts, for instance, that are licensed for the road. And we see that in the agricultural sector as well, with agricultural equipment being driven on our roadways. Any considerations for the employers from that standpoint?
You know, that's a really good question. I've never had that before. I do know that there are some um, resources available on safety driven related to forklift driving, but and safety driven, for those of you who don't know, is the Health and Safety Association for trucking and transportation. Um, but I don't think that their material relates to forklifts being operated on the road. So let me see what I can find on that.